was regarding the syntax of multiple White Houses, multiple administrations with radical, and defended uses of it as collusion slash S through political parties, through administrations, through Trump's first administration. There are people involved with the Clinton people, with the Biden administration, even a guy named Hunter that's not Hunter Biden, but it was a guy named Hunter, a police officer, involved with a bunch of people on Park Street since I was a kid, involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes, and with private criminal enterprises never went away as collusions, with the differences of guilt, where that's involved with what witch trials are about. Like there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, but other was communicated for it, and other is being still communicated about it further than what our founders communicated to have communicated for themselves and about those founding locations and how they had to counter extort the rest of the presidents slash chiefs and the rest of the colonists and then the rest of the citizens, including the Native Americans, with the rest of the Native Americans that demonstrably were coupled with the colonists as the group of founders behind James Madison's plan that had the leverage and means to go to George Washington and to counter extort him too. People are not allowing people to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. No one had free speech at the time. Our founders demonstrably had to leave this to be declassified for us. But no one's allowing mandated law to be followed. How they're getting away with it is relative to a predicate X methods with the databases and communications tied to it where people deny it. And they say, oh, yeah, let's bring it before the courts. The courts have roles being and haven't been used remotely with all names on all sides of it. All sides of criminal and civil cases, the lawyers, the sources, the family members, and the news at the same time, and the courts the same way. All conjunctions to the names there, the names of the positions within the court, like victims advocates, increasingly have roles with overt criminal enterprises, plural, and with private ones at the same time, and with the interbranch and intelligence tied to them at the same time. Whole careers are kept predicate acts with facts, collusion slash S, with everything that comes before them. They're only capable of it because you guys have had self-eyed roles with principles, reversal. You guys changed what our founders communicated, which is simultaneously changing what nature itself communicates, like with black pupils, whites of eyes. It's not just that we can discern practically everyone at the same time, collusions, forcing the revelations here not be used, and collusions with people pretending people are speaking about theory. In other words, when we use how we have black people's whites of eye to discern right through, the guys leaving out the breaching method. Our founders left us, and nature itself demonstrates there was a human fact should be nature breaching method, non-distinctly, while sickly distinctly southern colonies and northern colonies entrenched, more than 13, and then America's founders were born. Already roles with 6 things had been sustained. The differences of those branches of government with which trials are about. It's about what you say what was simultaneously in place. Crazy laws, even against our black pupils, whites of eyes. And difference, when nature communicates to us about difference. We have eyes differently than other species' bodies. We are distinct from them, but we are non-distinct with them. And we are simultaneous with them, but there's also further hyper simultaneous here. Also, you guys are the ones that are not supposed to discriminate, not us. There are exceptions with businesses. In other words, not us in defenses of ourselves. If it's debatable, but not in defense of ourselves. In other words, they have intercultural and intracultural collusion slash S, where only 3 branches of government clearer than day, how the breaching method keeps them self-value roles, like with uses of radical defended, framing people as radical left, when they'll probably be the same thing if, in other words, if a Democrat was there. depending on the Democrats are worse with the border issues and with differences issues. But some ways that's not true. In some ways, the Republicans are more, it's the same shell game, a more shell game. The Republican and Democrats, in other words, the lawyers have also roles with the sin, worse than criminal incompetence with legal voices, having had left out. Not just how we have black people's voice advice too, but how there's criminal insidiousness natures. There are criminal insidiousness natures of positives like peace. Criminal insidiousness natures of positive like peace that a breaching method propagated rolls with. And those roles cultivated self-cultivations of that breaching method propagation. And nature demonstrated that too, and is demonstrating it. But this breaching method employed all identities of, sophistication to blame other things, others, or ourselves, while pretending they could speak for sophistication. Those demonstrations, and our founders' demonstrations. There's a reason why, like, one of the only things that all Americans remember is that someone once said, "Don't shoot until you see the whites of eyes." And there are proofs that is more so cipher to be deciphered than it is. In other words, all the databases were criminally foreign influence. No one had free speech. It was slavery entrenched, northern colonies, southern colonies. You guys have our founders framed right through our schools. You guys have sabotage of time roles. How much time did they waste practicing for school shootings? How much money did they waste having people pretend that their time was worth paying them to discuss that? They have wire crime acts and methods. They have predicate acts with facts methods, criminally foreign influence uses of the databases at the campuses, all ages and natures of them, including medical and fire. And they have acting tied to that. Then they have to pretend they have to pretend it's because they're legitimately unmarked police forms and they right to lie. That's why they leak things too, both parties. This breaching method showed everyone how to speak for the law. Nature shows us better. So in other words, radical is involved too with torture. They put in fake transcripts. Hartford Hospital has rules with foreign and domestic military, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also with EMS families like named Leahy. Also involved with doctors and their family. Involved with sexual and medical offenders. Also with judges like a Judge Killian. Increasingly involved with wire crimes and mail crimes. Identity theft, fraud, things. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and others. Fake ties to themselves and others, including doctors when I was a kid and now as an adult. They have collusions with a Phil Colo and a bunch of other people, with a bunch of probate court judges and superior court judges and the district courts people, also with prosecutors and their kids and the extended family members of judges and their roles together too, as with organized crime acts and methods. Federal evidence is rackets worse than war crimes that are only capable of being self-valued roles with them at countries A through Z, the suits and ties, counters and exceptions. Valuing too their differences to hide behind and through, where how the breaching method has to hide behind them and through that, and hide behind, in other words. So, because the breaching method never stopped being demonstrated to us by nature. It is sickly distinctly against countries A through Z. Is sickly distinctly against cause of the worst natures of criminal enterprises. Time collusion /S with all names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, even when they're not in the cases. And they run into high lie progressions. And just to complicate investigators can measure and maintain. People shock and awe, leaving out the roles with organized crimes, including ones associated with the very natures of things that certain types of, quote, crimes countering bodies are the ones that are only allowed to counter. Like the Department of Children and Families has roles with people that work with the state corrections offices, with intimate ties and with sexual circles, involved with, um, what's her name? Gail King. And they're forcing me to bring this up. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and others while they forced the principal child abuser. These are also people with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, putting fake things in databases, acting tied to it. Roles with judges and prosecutors, trying to make fake exceptions, hiding what's actually recorded. All kinds of predicate acts with Weathersfield police attached me to fake conversations with themselves at the police station. Wasn't at all as a kid. And now as an adult too, they did the same thing. And they forced Saudis to collusions with people involved with that both times. Some of the names, some of the people are named with last name Dillon, Kevin Dillon, Anna Dillon, or Ann or Annie Dillon. Multiple natures of businesses, like real estate businesses associated with a Dillon family, and their roles with Marines too. And I never had a word of conversation with a Pat Vincent. He's one of the people, the intelligence families and their sources, where have been playing foreign and domestic with criminal enterprises, have roles putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me on my street, and with people from my area that didn't even go to my schools, have roles with people putting fake things in those databases and directing, acting tied to it. So, in other words, this is worse than criminal incompetence with uses of radical and uses of collusions that are already recorded at triages across the country. There's a Jennifer Kennepicky that the intelligence families from Weathersfield recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed she's involved with interstates. Since she was a kid, she was a victim / hyper victim, repeating fake things of others with triages, involved with the intelligence community, and involved with the state of Connecticut corrections offices and judicial branch offices, involved with predicate acts and predicate acts methods next to campuses, like with a Joe Aiello too. I never saw him on my campus till he graduated. I never had a class with a Joe Aiello. In other words, increasingly people from my grammar school I also didn't have classes with, involved with a Joe Aiello, with a former Mayor Gold, and our O'Brien family, and our Colonial family near me, that are further involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, and some police forms that are bringing them up in confessions and refusing to identify themselves at the Weathersfield Police Department, with confessions over the phone too, but also they're forging and switching names. And as ones that fake conversations to me and fake ties to me, like with this Dillon family. I never had a word of conversation with the Dillon family too. No. And some Mendez brothers. One of the Mendez brothers I never had a word of conversation with, pretended other at the Weathersfield police station, as his roles with arrays of falsified police reports for the same arrest and confessions tied to it, where they just put nonsense and they're changing the arresting officers' names and pretending that's not a confession. And they put no writing, so you can't count them. They're switching names, forging names, therefore refusing to identify themselves legitimately. These are also people that had roles putting fake things and fake ties to me by putting little tricks behind my back to teachers, as people next to each campus I went to who have connections, except for Middlesex Community College. But it is plausible because of their roles with next to every other campus, with the people and their roles with sequence shifts with that and other federal evidences crimes with the FBI and courts and state police and overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time, and people with campuses at the same time, collusions with their families, and the differences of adult and kid and their syntax. So they're not following mandated law because they have collusions already, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the formal interbranch law names, the law names, the ones with the judicially answering offices, corrections offices, the news, at the same time. Same federal evidences, crime, wire crimes, sequence shifts, identity theft, fraud, slanders types of incidents, fake motivations, screening their roles with all these different countries. Not the way they pretend, plus their delusions rot together. We're going to have to teach people, well, I'm not even a doctor. We could delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence, fact, nature, quality aspects, and natures of collusions recorded here, mixed with courts, with all kinds of cases and criminal enterprises and private ones, and more people involved with the reporting shooting of President Trump. Involved also with a Ray Claw who shot a pelican at me the day before that. Involved with a bunch of people with like presidential type theme and weapons theme. Like a Kerr family is increasingly involved planting evidences with intelligence family members in my area, involved with wire crimes with Wethersfield police, and people that do and say things fake at locations and online so they can bring things before courts where they already have to cover up what they already were collusions with. As ones involved with overt criminal enterprises, plural, private ones at the same time, and with their educators involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, putting fake things in databases against kids they don't even know. Ugh. And you can't pretend these people know the kids based on grades still. There are too many natures of organized crimes that we could observe being exploited now as names that were planting evidences in the past. Like Anthony Yagman is increasingly involved with more women and men, child abusers, leaders of the kids, including sexual and medical, like with Miss Riley, with some sexual syntax regarding a little girl that lived in my area at the time. Increasingly, there were people planting evidences with my area, consciously with people who were putting class placements next to me. In other words, I never even met a lot of people in my grade. They're just putting up fake things in databases, as the ones roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases, depositions before the World Trade Center attack too. So, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, is involved with confessions of people who were involved with courts that were involved with planting evidences at West Hartford locations and New Britain and all locations, planting roles with organized crimes with people intercities and states and internationally. And as people involved with the World Trade Center attack with the name Scalora and the places and people associated with a Claudia Scalora, intercities, interstates, like Miami, Orlando, Florida, West Hartford. I don't know where. I believe she lives in East Hartford. There's a Robert Cheverry, who's one of the lawyers of a former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act in a 2006 district court case. He was warned by a Judge Nation or by Judge Winters not to show up to that case if and when it ever came up without a lawyer. He's all that lawyer and people next to his law offices, which is not far from the state capitol, and Harry Beecher Stowe, Mark Twain houses together there. They have roles increasingly with people with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, and other campuses, intercities, as ones involved with proven child abusers, who also have predicate acts methods with the names next to the campuses, and people who just were filmed next to the campuses by WTNH, has sources on and off campuses involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences, and using their kids for fake motivations. An O'Neill family has fake ties to me, fake natures of ties to me. And they were planting evidences in wire, mail crime, digital crimes, and whiting forensics, and people from other countries, including Saudi Arabia, foreign and domestic, military and divers. As one of the people increasingly involved with former Mayor Gold and his people tied to him, and increasingly affected confessions to me, which also designed to make it look like they know me. I know them when I don't. She attacked me when I said mean things back to her. And in other words, that was also attacking on me verbally. After I ignored it with the other people the year before, or whatever, and then it stopped. And then in other words, that was that one time I went over. She just stayed on me. Then I said something. I don't remember what they put in the thing. I never showed it to my parents. In other words, I don't know if they call it an auto pen. I use it or something like that. But these are people too. She has a Joello also on the side of a on the side entrances to Millwoods Park. Is one of the ones involved with organized crimes with child abusers. They confessed and recorded. There's a Joello involved with the former mayor Gold with that, and they demonstrated to me non-verbally when I was jogging, and I just went by them. I didn't have anything to do with them. Then Joella was pretending passions and emotions about how we shot a gun. He said he was there. I don't remember. I thought it was someone else. No, we did it. He's changed. But in other words, those people he brought up, like a Christopher Cullen, also has roles with people that were. No, I never had a class with him. He's recorded involved with a Joe DeMoro, involved with my 5th grade teacher and people in my 4th grade class and 6th grade class. Increasingly with syntax collusions with people tied to body dumping spots, murders, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people involved with trying to pretend they know me and planting evidences, and with the interbranch switching and forging names. Right on Facebook, they have rape threats. Right on Facebook, they have an officer Jerry Miller, pretending I was growing pot on my porch. I'm right on Facebook with the people planting evidence on all sides of my house. Oh, they know they recorded this. They use the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie, which is also where and how they're recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. A bunch of people involved with the intelligence community roles where and how they are manifest at town lines. They have collusions with World Trade Center attack predicate acts and with criminally foreign influence uses out of the databases at every campus, every age and nature of them, and the differences of them. In other words, please get me off of fake conversations with WFSB. Has something to do with people with Gail King. They're implying that she has roles with the intelligence community, and she does to an extent with people with the prisons too, involved with relative body dumping spots and child abusers and other natures of crimes. They have all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes with psychiatry, also tactical delusions raw with the prisons and the corrections officers, judicial branch officers, as the names of also with predicate acts at the campuses. Increasing the educators are the ones involved with wire crimes with Wethersfield police and falsified police reports with them and predicate acts with them recorded. These are the same ones. They run to hide live progressions, like at triages, where they force mental evaluations. They're doing things to make people raise their voice. I found this. I caught them. I made them record themselves. Then they knew I caught that. So then they framed me 2 times. They totally made up things. Digital crimes, wire crimes. They even have a Judge Killian collusions with that, with sexual methods, speaking fake things and delusions in databases, as collusions with sexual medical offenders of kids, rape threats, people, and then people lying about why they forced me there, pretending I was fighting with my mother, because I forced my mother had before that. I called the police. I'm not going to tell you, but like 3 months after my father died, I was like, I'm not going to tell you why. Just tell the police, like, no. And I said, I'm done. I told him I'm going to be very violent verbally until you do it. So it took me a few days. I made the whole block. And finally they came. And I was calm. I saw them. I knew they were going to, and then they took me for a mental evaluation at Harvard Hospital. I saw the people there tied to a Kevin Dillon. I don't know his name. Involved also with Parks and Rec. Increasingly with Wethersfield town offices, Wethersfield Community Center, and the campuses, and election spots, and religious spots, and names on all sides of it, and the differences of guilt there or next to it. And yes, guilt. These are people with sequence shifts calling hate crimes on themselves on a mass scale. It's relative to where and how. I asked myself and studied where and how they could get away with pretending not to realize that the educators have obligations to make it clear as day that there's a breaching method involved with where and how people's feelings get hurt. And they're still blaming it on our founders rather than the breaching method. People's feelings are supposed to get hurt when they're trying to hurt their feelings. You know, even if if it hurts their feelings or not, if you're getting your education stolen, they're wasting your time. Then they're going to spend more time wasted doing a drill for shooters. They could have gone like that and made nets that are remote control and with the cameras put it up. You know what I'm saying? You have the difference. That's not that technology is not hard. It's just a list. See, they have everything obfuscated. They have every subject parted. You guys left out witch trials. Why there's a witch trials place next to the witch trial, next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. You left out why and how our founders declassified for why and how. They had to leave slavery entrenched. You don't vote on slavery and pretend the Constitution's on a bridge. You don't make the sick voices A through Z who came through sick campuses only capable of being that or sensing anyone coming out of it anyway for the breaching method. That's you guys are still doing it A through Z. Here at the knee. Vaccines. That's your thing.